One of the staples of the cosmic horror genre is its ability to capture things incomprehensible and unknowable. But how exactly do you show something you aren't supposed to know or understand? And a good cosmic horror story knows how to circumvent this with a certain kind of trope. But there's a catch. The trope in itself is a paradox. The best part of it is that it's subtle. You may already have been staring at it right in the face, or maybe it's been staring at you all this time. Let's explore this paradox through some of the movies that could arguably define the cosmic horror genre all by themselves. We'll go at it by scale, showing what we can do with the larger setting, and have the walls close in on us to show how this trope adapts to its surroundings. What better way to begin exploring things unknown than with a lighthouse? A lighthouse is so full of symbolism that it can either symbolize hope or dread. In the dark, it's a literal guiding light to save ships from dangerous waters and help them reach firm and stable land. On the other hand, its light often pierces the thick fog of the open sea, lighting the way to the unknown. Annihilation uses both of these symbolisms and turns it into the shimmer. All at once, it could be a pathway to transformation and transcendence, or it could mean losing yourself completely. In the movie, the lighthouse is where the meteor housing the Eldritch being crashed into. Once there, a strange light began to expand from it, transforming into what will be known as the shimmer. Initially, everyone was evacuated, but curiously, everyone who went to examine or study the crash never returned once they went past the boundary of the shimmer. Up until we get to experience what happens within it through Lena's perspective, everyone outside had no knowledge of what was inside. The closer Lena's team gets to the center of it all, the more we understand what happens in the shimmer. Refraction. Everything in the shimmer gets refracted and transforms into something else. As far as human knowledge goes, there is no rhyme or reason to these transformations. They just change. An alligator with the features of a shark. Different kinds of flowers blooming from one stem. A woman becomes one with nature as she blooms. Towards the end, we get more information on the being jump-starting this transmogrification. But the information only served to emphasize the nature of the shimmer. Ambiguous. From matter to time, nothing was spared once you entered the boundary of the shimmer. In an interview with the director of Annihilation, he confirms that the shimmer is a metaphor for the self-destructive nature of humanity, both biologically and emotionally. This is further reinforced by the movie's focus on the marriage of Lena and Cain, as well as Ventress having cancer. But when was the last time you were even close to a lighthouse? The lighthouse is a great symbolism as far as settings go. However, what if we zoom in closer? What if we go somewhere smaller and more present in our everyday lives? In Annihilation, Lena actively pursues the shimmer in an effort to save Cain. In the Mist, people are just going about their normal lives when they are effectively boxed into a viewing room of cosmic proportions. The viewing room? It's a grocery. The very same kind you go to at least once a week. It's just perfect for seeing everything because everything around it is made of glass. The people there are a mixing pot of unique individuals, and what better way to explore a new plane of existence than with people you would normally avoid? The Mist, much like all good cosmic horror stories, is a slow burn. It takes some time to show how the unusual mist moved towards their town as if it had a will of its own. After a storm, it forces different characters from different places on the spectrum to gather in the grocery store to resupply. It's a very vulnerable state they find themselves in. They have no knowledge of what's happening inside, the state of their loved ones, and they're stuck with people they'd rather not be around. This kickstarts a diverse set of reactions, conclusions, and factions. At first, the most dangerous things to worry about were people, but as the mist closes in, it becomes apparent that there's something more sinister out there. On the first night of them staying in the grocery store, they were attacked by cosmic bugs that take out a sizable chunk of the people taking shelter in the grocery. The very thought of something inhuman preventing them from exiting is enough for people to break down, make rash decisions, and ultimately turn against each other. Unlike Annihilation, David and his son didn't actively seek out the mist like Lena did with the shimmer. And unlike Lena, David wasn't venturing out into the unknown, he was being boxed in by forces that he couldn't comprehend. The Eldritch beings trapping them inside the grocery store had no ill intent, but instead acted on instincts. Again, we are faced with the indifference that the wider universe, or in this case, the wider multiverse, has for us. A scene that emphasizes this is when they are faced with an Eldritch Colossus only to be ignored by. This forced the shift of the group dynamics that ultimately provided a mirror of what the human mind can come to when faced with the fragility of its existence. However, if you'll notice, both in Annihilation and The Mist, the Eldritch beings, whether they were being aggressive or not, were indifferent at their core. There were moments of respite and there were moments moments of pure chaos. The otherworldly entities operated by instinct and not by desire. But what if they did? Let me tell you about one of the best examples of a paradox in a Lovecraftian story ever told. You can see them in the setting that the Void uses to mirror the cosmic horrors of another universe, a hospital. You see, a hospital in itself is a paradox because it can symbolize both life and death at the same time. In fact, as a person passes on in one wing, there's a chance that there's a person being born in another. That's what makes this setting so powerful as a metaphor for bridging two dimensions. In the Void, the hospital becomes this overlapping arena where the eldritch horrors from another dimension are battling it out with people fighting to survive. But more and more, the survivors are forced to go deeper into the depths of the hospital to confront the secrets hidden there. As they go closer and closer to the gates below the hospital, the line between the two dimensions gets thinner and thinner. But the secret they weren't expecting was that these eldritch horrors were brought here by the head doctor in a plan to resurrect his daughter. To do this, he served as a priest for the cult of the eldritch being, all in an effort to transcend this plane and be able to have the ability to give new life to his daughter. However, there is a catch. Transcending from this plane will mean turning into an eldritch being themselves. To us, they look monstrous, but to them, they're the epitome of beauty. It's another kind of twisted paradox. Again, the eldritch beings in the Void are not indifferent. However, to them, they're just saving people from death by making them into beings that cannot die. The interplay between life and death and the metaphor that the hospital carries is one of the best executed elements of the movie, and that extends to the other stories we talked about as well. But when you think about it, while the characters are the driving forces of these stories, the setting in itself can act as a mirror for these characters and express multiple things without saying anything. That's the power of a well-crafted setting, and that's the essence of this trope. The cosmic horror trope that lets us feel the greater magnitude of the wider universe is called the Eldritch location trope. For Annihilation, it was the lighthouse and its perimeter. For the Mist, it was the outside of the grocery store. For the Void, it was the hospital itself. If you'll notice, except for the lighthouse, these aren't exactly places that make you feel small. It's actually the opposite. A lot of these places make you feel like the walls are closing in on you. If you'll notice, as the story progresses, these settings grow more and more otherworldly. As Lena gets closer to the lighthouse, the refraction of everything around her grows in intensity. As the mist grows thicker, the grocery store feels smaller and smaller. As more and more beings enter the hospital, they begin to shift into other realities more often. Things beyond our nature of understanding begin to happen more often. In a way, these places are subject to the invasion of the eldritch being entering our plane of understanding. But this trope, this paradox, isn't just meant to increase the stakes or the tension that the audience feels. It's meant to bridge what we know and what we don't. It plants a seed inside your head, an idea that you water every time you come back to ponder it. And once this seed grows, watering it will always make you question your place in the universe. Cosmic horror as a genre relies on something other than jump scares or gore to capture the attention of its viewers. Instead of making you look around for dark shadows where ghosts can hide, it makes you look inside yourself and examine the darker parts of your being. So, what do you think, Lulu?